As morning mist curls along the pines of Fox Hollow, Sheriff John Carter sips black coffee from his father's old enamel mug, watching the world go quiet. The steam rises gently, curling like smoke against the backdrop of fiery orange maples and the steady gray of the Appalachian sky. The porch creaks under his boots as he shifts his weight, taking in the rhythm of morning. Inside, above the hearth, a wood-burned plaque rests where his father had left it decades ago. Built by Thomas Carter, 1973. For peace, not profit. That line had always meant something to John, but after his father's passing this past spring, it had gained weight. The cabin wasn't just wood and nails anymore. It was history, legacy. A clause in the will even spelled it out. No sale, no subdivision, no development. The land, the lodge, and every inch between was to remain Carter-owned, Carter cared for, and Carter kept. The coffee is still warm when the phone buzzes beside the window frame. He steps back inside, setting the mug on the counter, and picks up the landline, because in Fox Hollow, cell service is still a coin toss. "Morning, Sheriff," says Miss Lorna, voice sweet with that blend of concern and nosiness that only lifelong neighbors can master. "Got another bluebird knocking at my window. Third morning in a row. You reckon that means something?" John chuckles softly. "Maybe he likes your new curtains." "You hush," she says playfully. "You stopping by later for pie? I made the crust proper this time, used chilled lard and everything. Wouldn't miss it." They hang up with the usual well wishes. Watch the leaves. Don't forget suppers at 5. And John returns to the porch, eyes drawn to the winding gravel road that threads between his property and the Sycamore Bluff development just beyond the hill. The town's grown sideways these past few years. HOA homes had sprouted like mushrooms, big, pale ones, with no porch swings and far too much symmetry. He's halfway through scraping old paint off the window trim when the sound of high heels on gravel interrupts the birdsong. He looks up, squinting against the rising sun. A figure approaches, tall, manicured, wearing a beige pantsuit that clashes with the muddy landscape. Clipboard in hand, Deborah Witherspoon. She waves like they're old friends. "Good morning, Sheriff Carter, right?" John nods, already wiping his hands on a rag. "I'm Deborah," she says, stepping onto the porch like it's part of her jurisdiction. "President of the Sycamore Bluff HOA. Just wanted to stop by and chat about a few community concerns." He raises an eyebrow. "Well," she continues, "we've had some comments about your property. The woodpile is visible from the road, and the logs on the structure. Untreated, aren't they? It doesn't quite blend with the neighborhood aesthetic." John glances behind her. There's a good stretch of forest between them and the nearest neighbor. "You mean the raccoons have been filing complaints?" She presses her lips into a smile. "We take visual cohesion seriously. It affects property values." "I'm not part of the HOA," he says evenly. Deborah doesn't blink. "You're adjacent, and adjacency has impact." He crosses his arms, posture calm but firm. "This cabin's been here since 1973, before there were neighborhoods, before your HOA had a name, before your house was even framed." "Yes, well," she says, flipping open the clipboard, "here are our guidelines. Section 8 covers landscaping and structure visibility. Just food for thought." She offers the packet like scripture. John doesn't take it. "I'll keep my food and my thoughts," he says. "You can keep the packet." Her smile falters, but only a beat. "I'll let the board know we've made contact." She pivots on her heel and walks back down the gravel path, heels clicking like punctuation. John watches until she disappears over the rise. Then, slowly, he takes the rag back to the window frame. The silence returns. The mist is gone. The coffee cold. That evening, after sunset, he steps out with a flashlight to check the motion sensor by the trailhead and catches the glint of something laminated reflecting in the beam. He walks closer. A new sign has been staked into the earth. Sycamore Bluff Visual Compliance Zone. Laminated, centered, nailed into a wooden post. He exhales slowly, steady as a man used to dealing with more dangerous adversaries, but less ridiculous ones. Without a word, he rips it from the ground and leans it against the tool shed. The morning sun is just peeking over the ridge when he steps out with his coffee again. And there it is, a fresh sign. This one isn't staked. It's bolted directly to his mailbox. John picks up his mail from the post office. 7 envelopes. 6 are HOA violations. 1 is a fake invitation to a mandatory beautification workshop. The envelopes are all pristine, like they'd been printed with more concern for font than for facts. He thumbs through them as he walks to his truck, noting the stamped return address from the Sycamore Bluff Homeowners Association on each. Unapproved fence height. Unlicensed firewood storage. Improper gutter color. They read less like legal notices and more like petty grievances dressed in bureaucracy. His father's old warning comes to mind, something he'd muttered once while paying property taxes. They'll never kick down your door. They'll paper it to death. John folds the stack in half and slides it into the glove compartment without looking again. He drives slow through town, the kind of unhurried speed only small towns permit. Maple leaves flutter past the windshield as he pulls into the lot outside Maple Diner. A couple of pickups already sit parked outside, one of them belonging to Bill, who's been griping about his blue mailbox since spring. Inside, the air is thick with the smell of bacon, overbrewed coffee, and something vaguely citrus. The waitress, Cheryl, is already pouring before he sits. "Morning, Sheriff," she says. "Hope you brought an appetite. Bill's been venting about mailbox discrimination since 6. "Lucky me," John murmurs. Bill waves from his booth, his wiry gray hair standing like a warning signal. "You get one too?" John raises an eyebrow. Bill taps a sheet of paper on the table. "Violation. Said the shade of blue I used on my mailbox wasn't community approved." "Since when is Navy offensive?" Cheryl chimes in from the counter. "Deborah's HOA sends out more paper than the Christmas post office. Said my Halloween door wreath had unwholesome color saturation." John sips his coffee. "She's expanding her vocabulary." "No," Bill grunts. "She's expanding her kingdom." John listens quietly. Over the past weeks, the complaints had gone from annoying to absurd, and now he was seeing a pattern. Targeted enforcement, thinly veiled control. On the drive home, the air has turned crisper. Leaves crunch beneath his tires as he rounds the bend toward Fox Hollow. That's when he sees it, just past the cedar tree line where his property trail begins. A new sign, laminated and nailed to a fresh wooden post. Future site of Sycamore Bluff Nature Preserve, sponsored by HOA. The trail behind it leads directly to the old deer stand his father built when John was still in middle school. He parks, gets out, and stares at the sign like it might blink. It doesn't. He pulls it from the post and tosses it into the truck bed without a word. That night, he hauls 2 trail cameras out of storage, ones he'd used years back for tracking bobcats. He mounts one on a pine facing the creek and another under the eave of the barn, both angled discreetly, each set to motion-triggered recording. He doesn't expect immediate answers. He just wants a record, in case this turns into more than signs and citations. He's brushing sawdust from his hands when a knock rattles the cabin door. Miss Lorna stands there holding a tin covered in a hand towel, cheeks red from the wind. "I figured you could use something warm," she says. "Apple cinnamon with a little nutmeg, just how your daddy liked it." He takes it with a grateful nod. "You know," she adds gently, "Deborah's been making her rounds. Passed by my garden yesterday, made a note about my bird bath. Said it might be a mosquito hazard." "Did you remind her the birds were here first?" Miss Lorna laughs, the kind that comes from deep in the chest. "Didn't have to. I think the mockingbird took care of that. Later that night, as John rinses out his mug and turns off the kitchen light, he notices the digital clock on the stove blinking. No power. He checks the porch light switch. Nothing. The house is silent. He grabs his flashlight, makes his way to the side of the cabin where the utility box rests beneath the overhang. The switch is in the on position. No tripped breakers. The issue isn't internal. The battery radio still works. He flips through the static until he finds the number for the county utility office and calls from the landline. After a long wait and a tired-sounding clerk, he hears the reason. A report from the Sycamore Bluff HOA claimed the cabin was uninhabitable and posed a public hazard. "You're kidding," John says. "No, sir," the clerk replies. "Says it's unoccupied, unsafe. Someone flagged it as a non-permitted structure." "I've lived here for the past 6 months," he says, voice flat. "Then I suggest you send proof. We'll need occupancy verification and property documents before we can reactivate." He faxes the paperwork the next morning, including a copy of the deed, a scan of the will, and a written affidavit confirming daily residence. By sundown, the cabin hums again. The fridge clicks back on. The lights flicker once, then settle. John heads outside with a wrench to check the generator backup, just in case. As he walks past the shed toward the back of the property, the motion light clicks on behind him. The ground is soft from last night's rain. In the glow of the floodlight, he sees them clearly. Fresh tire tracks arcing along the edge of the creek. A string quartet plays Mozart. White chairs dot the back pasture. John's John Deere tractor is deemed offensive to the bridal aesthetic. He watches from the porch, coffee cooling in his hand, as strangers in black slacks and sparkly shoes stomp through the frost-glazed edge of his soybean plot. A white tent stretches across the field like a misplaced circus, framed by banners and floral arches. People are laughing, waving streamers, testing microphones. He hears one man shout something about adjusting the aisle to avoid that ugly green machine, referring unmistakably to his tractor. The same field where his father once knelt to dig by hand, planting early soy in stubborn soil, now hosts a catered affair complete with champagne flutes and white parasols. John's eyes drift to the far corner of the property where his dad once stood, wiping sweat from his brow and muttering, "Even good ground gets trampled by folks who don't respect it." He sets the mug down and walks slowly toward the tent. The frost crunches under his boots. Nobody notices him until he reaches the edge of the carpet they'd laid over the sprouting greens. A man with a headset turns to him, all politeness and pressure. "You the groundskeeper?" he asks, already holding out a clipboard. "I'm the owner." "Oh, well, the man chuckles nervously. "That tractor, sir. It's a bit of an eyesore in the ceremony frame. Would you mind moving it? Just for the photos." John doesn't answer. He turns his gaze toward the barn. It takes him all of 20 steps to reach it. The metal handle of the manure spreader is cold in his hand. He flips the switch. There's a hum, then a roar. The spreader sputters to life like an angry beast. Slurry begins spraying in a wide, unforgiving arc, catching the edge of the tent, the outer chairs, the heels of the quartet's first violinist. A scream breaks through the Mozart. Guests scatter, some tripping on chair legs, others trying to shield themselves with rented linens. One woman in stilettos sinks ankle-deep into mud. A tuxedo-clad groomsman hurls his wine glass into the field like it might help. A teenager, someone's cousin maybe, pulls out a phone and begins filming with both hands, cackling as he narrates, "Yo, the sheriff just nuked the wedding." Amid the chaos, Deborah finally appears. Her beige heels click across the boards as she storms toward him. "Are you insane? This is a private event?" "You didn't ask permission." "This land is HOA adjacent. That makes it community access during designated... It's private property." Amber, in lace and ivory, stands frozen near the tent, bouquet limp in one hand. Her eyes meet John's, and for the first time he sees something besides the guiltless entitlement so common in these HOA types. There's something like regret. She doesn't say a word. That night, John cleans the manure spreader, silent and methodical, as the last of the wedding trucks bump down the gravel road. He doesn't smile. He doesn't curse. He simply works. It's almost midnight when the call comes. He picks up on the second ring. It's the county fire dispatcher. "Sheriff Carter, we've got a report of a blaze near Fox Hollow. Looks like it's on your property." He doesn't speak. The breath leaves him, but his hands move fast. Boots, jacket, flashlight, siren. He drives faster than usual, gravel flying from under his tires as he makes the sharp turn at the ridge. The wind hits his face as he steps out. Smoke is visible from the ridge. John races up the trail. His cabin is burning. The chimney still stands, surrounded by blackened timber and smoke-stained stone. It's all that's left of the Carter legacy. The ground is soft beneath John's boots, damp from the hoses still coiled near the scorched brush line. The structure is gone. No windows, no doorframe, just black skeleton beams and a sagging foundation that still smells like burned pine and memory. He walks slowly, the ash crunching faintly underfoot, and stops beside what used to be the front steps. There's nothing to say. He hears it again, his father's voice, calm and gruff, from long ago. Fire doesn't destroy character, it reveals it. Fire Chief Charlie approaches from behind, helmet off, jacket slung over one shoulder. He gestures to a patch of disturbed soil near the side of the cabin. Found a gas can hidden under that brush. Still half full. There's more. Accelerant trails, not natural. And these... He crouches and points to a set of boot prints near what was once the tool shed. Not ours. Treads light, not from any standard issue. John narrows his eyes. The shape is distinct, smaller than his own. Clean pattern, brand new, tactical. His mind draws a line, quiet but precise. Deborah Witherspoon, walking into the diner last week in a full camo jacket, proudly proclaiming it her fall forest wear. Charlie says something else, but John is already walking toward the barn, where the Wildlife Cam SD cards have been tucked away. He doesn't speak until he's back at the sheriff's office, seated at his desk, the footage folder open and fast-forwarding through clips of squirrels and shifting branches. Then it hits. At dusk, from the angle tucked high in the pine, the camera catches movement. A figure in full camouflage steps into view, glancing left and right. A gas can in one hand. Deborah's blonde bob unmistakable even in low light. She bends, pours the fuel in a practiced arc, then steps back and drops something. A rag, maybe. Flame flickers. She watches it catch, just for a second. Then she turns and walks away. No mask, no gloves, no hesitation. John freezes the frame. Her face glows faintly in the firelight, a thin smile curving the corner of her mouth. His hands don't shake. He doesn't swear. He simply breathes. There's a knock at the office door. He slides the laptop shut before answering. Amber stands in the hallway, her eyes rimmed red, but determined. She doesn't flinch under his gaze. "I owe you an apology," she says, voice low. "For the wedding? For everything?" John doesn't answer. "She told me you'd be out of town, said the field was part of a community expansion. I didn't know until the fire." He watches her carefully. What did she want? "She has plans," Amber says. "Big ones. She's been talking about a wellness retreat. Spa, hiking paths, yoga decks. She said your lodge was the only thing stopping her from completing the deal. Said if it were gone, maybe you'd sell. Or leave." John leans back, arms crossed. "And you believed her?" Amber looks down. "I don't know what I believed, but I saw her come home that night, smelling like gas, boots caked in ash. She doesn't stay long. She doesn't have to. John has enough. Over the next 2 days, he builds the file, every citation, every tampered notice, every false report about his power or wildlife attractants. He checks local gas station footage. There she is again, 2 nights before the fire, filling a red plastic can and paying cash. He cross-references every signature on her HOA letters with official documents and finds inconsistencies, looped letters that don't match, dates that contradict known meetings. He digs into the HOA's charter itself, checking county filings. That's when it cracks. The charter, Deborah's holy grail of enforcement, was never legally registered. No notarization, no county approval, no legitimate signatures. In the eyes of the law, the Sycamore Bluff HOA has no standing. It exists on threat and assumption alone. John leans back in his chair, the fire footage still paused on screen. Deborah isn't just an overbearing nuisance anymore. She's a fraud, and now she's a felon. His phone buzzes. Caller ID, County Clerk's Office. He answers. Sheriff Carter? We just received a permit application from a Deborah Witherspoon claiming annexation of your lot into the HOA jurisdiction. She's attached a development sketch labeled Community Forest Center on top of your parcel. John doesn't blink. She's already trying to claim what she burned. Deborah's latest newsletter reads, Sheriff under investigation for aggressive behavior. It's a lie, but an old tactic. The flyer arrives in every mailbox in Sycamore Bluff, wrapped in glossy paper and smugness. Full of vague accusations and blurry photos, it claims that John has intimidated residents, interfered with community expansion, and obstructed beautification efforts. One picture shows him yawning in the gas station parking lot, grainy and poorly framed, with a headline that reads, Is this the face of order? John tosses it aside without a word. By now, Deborah's strategy is clear. If you can't control someone, drown them in noise. Miss Lorna stops by that morning with a pie in one hand and something better in the other. Clarity. She talks louder when she senses the silence turning on her, she says, settling the tin on his counter. John nods. Then let's see who's still listening. He drives to Bill's house first. The old man has a box of papers waiting by the porch, bundled in twine. HOA notices going back 3 years, Bill mutters, wheezing as he lifts the lid. Fine for my Christmas lights, my wind chimes, my dog's bark for God's sake. John loads the box into his truck and makes his rounds. By sunset, he sat at 8 kitchen tables, flipped through dozens of envelopes, and heard stories that stretch from petty fines to quiet intimidation. One widow was charged for painting her door the same color it had been for decades. Another man received a late fee for unpaid dues in a neighborhood he didn't technically live in. They had all stayed silent until now. John compiles the evidence into a growing file, tagging each violation, cross-checking against Deborah's charter. With the forged HOA documents and arson footage already in hand, the file begins to swell beyond a single charge. By the end of the week, it includes arson forgery of public documents, criminal impersonation of an official harassment and extortion, fraudulent claims against property ownership. He visits the assistant district attorney in nearby Laurel Springs. A young man with tired eyes and a sharp pen, the ADA, agrees to expedite the case. This is a lot, he says, thumbing through the signatures. You sure she's not backed by someone bigger? She's just loud, John replies, but noise doesn't mean power. By Thursday, Deborah shifts to offense. She announces a town-wide HOA integrity meeting in the park across from her home. Signs appear overnight. No law above the HOA. Folding tables are arranged, pamphlets handed out. A petition circulates to have John removed as sheriff. He doesn't flinch. He lets her gather her crowd. And when the park fills, he arrives. Not alone, but with 2 deputies and a black binder under his arm. He waits until she begins speaking. Our sheriff has demonstrated behavior unbefitting of this community. Disruption, hostility. Deborah Witherspoon. She turns. The microphone squeals. For a moment, the crowd stills. John steps forward, calm and deliberate, flipping open the binder. You are hereby charged with the following crimes under West Virginia state law. He reads the charges one by one, his voice cutting through the cold November air. Arson, forgery, impersonation, harassment, fraud. As he speaks, a deputy opens a folder and hands him the arrest warrant, freshly signed by the judge that morning. Deborah's face goes from pale to pink to furious. This is outrageous, she snaps. You have no authority here. I am the president of... You're the president of a dissolved organization with no legal charter, John says, and you're under arrest. She stumbles back as the deputies take her by the arms. Papers flutter to the ground like autumn leaves. The crowd begins murmuring, then clapping. Someone laughs, and from somewhere in the back, a Bluetooth speaker begins to play The Star-Spangled Banner. A new sign hangs over freshly stained wood. Fox Hollow Cabin. Karen Proof. Since 2024. The lettering is clean, carved deep into cedar and sealed to withstand sun and snow. It hangs just above the porch beam, catching the morning light like a badge earned through battle. The boards beneath it still smell faintly of sawdust and pine oil. John Carter sits beneath that sign, coffee in hand, boots propped on the railing, as steam curls upward and the world exhales around him. Inside, the rebuilt cabin hums softly. It's not identical to the old one. Some things can't be copied, but it holds the same bones, the same heart. The fire pit out front has been rebuilt in stone, double insulated, anchored deep. His father's bench is back too, darker now, bolted to the earth. He remembers the first pit they built together, his dad kneeling with an old spade, muttering through his teeth. Always leave room for light, even after the ashes. That phrase never meant much to a teenage John. Now it means everything. It's been 2 weeks since the courtroom verdict. The memory plays in his mind like an old radio broadcast. Deborah Witherspoon sat rigid in the defense chair, her beige blazer looking more like armor than fashion. The judge read the charges one by one. Arson, forgery, criminal impersonation. The weight of each fell like a gavel. Then came restitution, $800,000 in damages, most of it uninsured, because intentional fires don't get coverage. With the HOA dissolved, her fake authority nullified, and a civil suit pending, the only thing left of her empire was her manicure and a parking citation. She didn't go to prison. John hadn't pushed for it. He wanted something better: visibility, consequences, public truth. So she was sentenced to 1,000 hours of community service. The first photo surfaced a week ago, Deborah in a neon vest, scrubbing graffiti from the park restroom while 3 teenagers watched, recording with grins wide enough to stretch into next county. The irony was too perfect to touch. And Sycamore Bluff? It breathed. A week after the trial, the town threw a barbecue in the open lot across from the old HOA office. Tables overflowed with cornbread, ribs, and folding chairs that didn't match and didn't need to. Kids ran barefoot through the grass, dodging sprinklers. No permits. No clipboard inspections. Just neighbors, like it used to be. Miss Lorna arrived late with a cherry pie and a twinkle in her eye. "Victory slice," she called it, "and don't you dare say no." He didn't. Later, on the porch with the radio low and the forest quiet, Amber came by. She didn't walk up the steps, just stood by the rebuilt trail sign, coat drawn tight. "I wanted to thank you," she said, "for not including me in the suit, for not turning your back when you had every reason to." John looked at her for a long moment before answering. "Do better." She nodded, eyes glassy, and walked back down the trail without asking for anything else. Now the calendar has turned. December settles in. The frost returns, gentler this time. The land feels watched over, not just by cameras, but by memory, by effort, by law. Miss Lorna swings by in the early evening. They sit with mugs in hand, watching the blue-gray dusk drape over the hills. "You ever regret not stopping her sooner?" she asks, her voice more curious than accusatory. John smiles. "Numbers some weeds pull themselves out. You just have to let them grow loud enough." The cabin stood again, not just as wood and stone, but as a quiet promise kept. What was once nearly lost to fire and greed had been reclaimed by patience, truth, and the steady hands of a community that remembered how to stand together. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive with noise, it comes with steady steps and signed papers. And in the stillness that follows, something stronger than anger takes root. Resolve. Like a fence line rebuilt after a storm, peace holds best when everyone lends a hand.